Saved you a few steps. Sure.
That and Laura, who's the one who lives across over there on Strathmore. So she has someone come in from insurance, homeowners insurance. So there's a big
Yeah, but
thing
it
on
doesn't look like it's-
top of the thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's something in the back as well. But there's another tree that the branch is off, and it's like literally in the tree, but it hasn't fallen. The insurance won't cover that. It has, the branch has to fall before the insurance will cover it. So she's got one estimate for $5,000, and she's got another estimate for the other tree that has the hanging branch still in the tree.
Got it.
It's $2,800. Yeah.
Where is
She
the,
said, this is a good time to take a look at your homeowner's insurance because
Yeah,
according,
it
she
moved
thought she had a
this
deductible of $1,000.
agendas. I see the policy
And
manual.
with hail and damage, hail and
Should be,
wind,
isn't there
she
some?
said it's
I forget what it was, I saw it, and then I
1%
forget what it
Sorry.
was.
of the value of your
Come on.
house. So instead of that $1,000 deductible, it's more than that.
Oh, no, that's archive meetings, isn't there one above
Oh,
that?
well,
It was.
Yeah.
Four agendas?
good old
New
Mike was
agenda.
working
Oh,
yesterday.
that's gonna be the, instead of the, okay, thanks.
Just
Got it,
let
got
you
it,
know.
okay. Oh,
I don't
yours.
know how many times he had to tell people, no, you can't go through the road closure sign. If you do and you run over the down wires, it may kill you. He was,
Are we
Very
ready?
sorry.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the August 7th Board of Education regular meeting. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Deca.
Here.
Mrs. Zetter.
Here.
Ms. Prouse.
Here.
Mr. Dobbins.
Here,
Mr. Souchaki.
Here, 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during public comments portion of the meeting. And we don't have any members of the public, so we'll move right on to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
so moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins.
Second.
Ms. Rouse, was that you?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion, any changes? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Prouse.
Aye.
Mrs. Deca.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Section 3, comments from the public. Once again, there's nobody visiting us tonight, so let's move on to treasurer's business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Number of items for approval tonight. I ask for items 4A, 5A through 5I for approval.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Deca and second by Mr. Dobbins. Mr. Treasurer, would you like to go through your agenda, please?
Yep, wanted to spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes on our fiscal year end financials. I have on the screen here kind of a summary of our general fund. And I have an attachment. This is going to be, if you guys wanted to use it on paper, it's kind of small, but we can always pull it up, and I'll pull it up here as one of our items. It's going to be D, T2D. But if we stick here and just look at our screen, so fiscal year 2024, the fiscal year begins 7/1 and ends 6/30. So it ended 6/30/24. And we can see our total revenue, $18,679,665.07. And our total expenditures are $17,768,632.62, which gives us a surplus because our revenues were higher than our expenditures. So a surplus of $911,032.45. And then when we add that to our beginning balance, which was $16,431,404, that gives us an ending balance of the year in the general fund of $17,342,437.15. So that means we've had surpluses the past 12 years. know that we were on a trajectory for a deficit, but the administration worked and, we really spent only on needs and really pushed off those wants and even lowered the budget and maybe pushed off some projects for the time being that we had, just to make sure our general fund would be okay. I'm going to go through some of the items in the general fund of where we see those differences. Any questions as I kind of move to this? All right, so
No,
T2.
but good news.
It is, it is. T2, and I told Tom as he was retiring, Tom, your whole tenure, you never deficit spent, so he liked that. T2D, as we look at it. So this on our screen is essentially the paper that we have in front of us, and we can see from column B, row 1, top left-hand corner, that's our beginning balance of the $16,431,404. And again, that was this number right there. 431,400, rounded up 405. And then we have all of our revenues in the top half, and our bottom number right here of 17,342,437. 17,342,437. And if we kind of compare it, column N to column P, let's take a look at that. I'm going to put 2 arrows there. We're just looking, I'm going to make this a little bigger on the screen. So column P is the May 5-year forecast, and column N is going to be our actual numbers. So let's take a look. And we can see the very first row, which is general property taxes, row 2, we came in at $10,063,233. Our May 5-year forecast was $10,070,095. It's off by about $7,000. It's actually due to the fact that we had an agreement, a David Seed agreement. He's our property tax attorney, Burns and McIntyre and Seed. And one of the local companies have not paid their agreed upon amount, so he's following that up. So that's that difference that we see right there. The row underneath, the 5-year forecast, we had $3,052,385, and that's what we brought in, $3,052,385. Below it, the 5-year forecast, and that's our unrestricted grants and aid. We had $822,000, and we brought in $826,000, so a little bit more. Below that, we have our restricted grants and aid, and the 5-year forecast was $185,000, rounding, and we brought in $265,000. The increase is primarily due to more threshold, which formerly was called catastrophic costs, so more threshold cost reimbursement. And George, if you wanted to talk, maybe a quick minute on threshold cost.
So, certain categories of special needs students have costs associated with them, and the state works through a program where you document all these expenses and submit that for their approval, and then they determine the amount based upon the pool of money they get from the federal and state government for that area. So, it's a big process. It involves a lot of different departments to get information and to kind of just make sure that we don't miss any of those costs that we incur throughout the course of the year. So that's one of those parts that ties into a lot of the things we do. So in the plan, we try to make sure that we're documenting things the right way, working with the Treasurer's Department to give them the accurate information so we can get back as much money as we can from the government.
We got more reimbursed than we had estimated, which is a positive, good thing. Below that is going to be our state share of local property taxes. The 5-year forecast from May had $1,730,000. We brought in $1,735,000, pretty spot on. And below that is all other operating revenue. The 5-year forecast was $2,445,000. We brought in $2,550,000. So an increase of about $100,000 there. I did want to point out one thing, and I'll pull this up on the screen. Interest, revenue from interest that we have. And if we look at the spreadsheet T2G, here we can see our primarily 2, interest on investments from Red Tree and Star. Star is going to be blue, Red Tree is going to be red, and I have it down here separated a bit more. We're going to see the monthly revenue right down here in blue, and we just from STAR, 926,000. And up here is 179,000 for a total of 1.1 million. I was trying to get us to $1 million in STAR, got close, 926,000. I knew it was kind of, it was always good to have that fun game in front of me. But just for our money sitting in the bank, our investments, we got 1.1 million this past year. I think it's pretty remarkable.
Don't look for it this year.
Yep. Things can change very quickly, but
Yes.
we took advantage while we could.
Yes, and thank you for doing that.
And then the last two rows for revenue would be advances in. We just advanced in the amount back to us, so that matches at 166,000. And then all other financing sources, any small reimbursements we get or grants we partner with the ESC, and I need your workers' compensation revenue. 21,000 was estimated, we brought in 18,000, so pretty close. So overall, the amount was 18,495,000 was the May forecast, and we brought in 18,679,000. So more than what we had estimated, which is a good thing. In expenses, this is really where we saw the savings. So the first line we have here, line 15, personnel services, so our salaries that we have. 5-year forecast was 10,237,000, and our expenditures were 10,138,000. It's extremely hard to get within 1% of that, so I watch that like a hawk. Because you never want to be over on anything that we have here, so I want to get it as close as we can. Leave a little cushion. The next line, line 16, is going to be retirement and insurance benefits. We had 4,134,000 in the forecast from May, and our actual expenditures were 3,953,000. Less than what we had estimated, and I really went heavy on our IDEA grant with benefits that we had, I believe. So trying to utilize our grants to our advantage, our general fund. Below that, we have purchase services. The May 5-year forecast had 3,281,000. We came in at 2,682,000. Now that's a combination of outplacements we have for special education students, which we have to budget high because we never know what's going to happen. Utilities, we budget high because we never know where we're going to be with electricity, water, sewer, gas. Legal counsel, we have to budget so much. So a lot of those items mixed in, and we came in under budget for what we have. Doesn't mean we don't have needs for repairs and whatnot, so we're tackling those as we go. Below that, supplies and materials, 5-year forecast budget, 723,000. We came in at 435,000. Below that, capital outlay, which is equipment, was 150,000. Was in the budget. We came in at 37,000. Below that, we have other objects, 302,000 was the amount from the forecast. We came in at 252,000. And the large cost there is the amount of fees that Cuyahoga County withdraws when they process property taxes. So that makes the bulk of the 252 that we see there. Below that, we have 200,000, which matches, and that was our transfers out. And 100,000 estimated for any advances out, and we just had 67,000 advanced out. So when it's all said and done, we had a surplus and our bottom line increase, which is good. So it just makes it more favorable for our position as a school district, as opposed to other schools that you're hearing about in the news. For Benna, there was a story that just came out where they had to cut busing and transportation because they have a large deficit in the forecast coming up. I know Bedford, 2 board meetings ago, was working with the Ohio Department of Education on a reduction plan because they have a deficit in their next year coming up ahead. So when we compare ourselves with our peer districts, we're very fortunate, and we have a strong, relatively speaking, budget in place. Any questions on the general fund?
Good work.
Congratulations, good work.
And then just want to show T2C. So this is our budget versus actual spreadsheet. It's kind of our story. So I just want to show the overall amount of all of our funds together. So if we were to open this on our computers, but I have it up on the screen here. So we see our general fund at the very top, and we went through that line item. Then we have all of our other funds in place, and that totaled unencumbered, so without encumbrances, $20,758,000. And this is set up with really all of our certificates of estimated revenues. So whenever we modify revenue with the county, I track it in here, and I have all my tick marks down here for all those reasons. And then we come to expenditures. So every time the Board of Education did a modification to perform improvements, I track it here. And I send all these to the county. And this sheet makes it very easy when our auditors come in to take a look. And our budgetary every year is very easy for them to put together. Essentially copy my spreadsheet and use it. This is actually an audit tool in place. So kind of easy when we're all speaking the same language, more or less. So overall, we started with 20.7 million. We ended with 21.6 rounded million. So altogether, our district's in solid financial shape across all of our funds that we have. And if we look at our permanent improvement fund, which is really going to fund a lot of our capital projects, now keep in mind that this is split up between 3 sub-accounts that we have. But that account ended with 2.7 million, and we began with 2.7 million. And we did spend 245,000. So we brought in money, essentially spent what we brought in, and we ended the same spot. So that's what we're going to use for a lot of our capital improvements that we have going forward, for the most part, that we have in place. And I'm proud to say that all of our grant accounts, we reconciled out, so I just have to file those reports with the state. And that takes a lot of time. Matt, you can attest to all the work we do in CCIP. There's a lot there. Any questions overall? I'll move to B. We just have 3 new vendors we're adding to the school district. The first one is Paladin Protective Systems. That's for the fire system emergency repair that we approved at the last board meeting. It was $15,000. So we did like just a blanket $15,000. They were the actual vendor that we had chosen. They're a local vendor from Valley View, so we're adding them in our system. Securitas Security Services, Fire Watch Services. Mr. Young's going to speak more on that in his section. 30,000 is the estimate. And Navigate 360, that's for safety and security training and software, $8,000, and that's a new vendor added for Fund 584, Title 4. If we go to purchase orders over 5,000, we just have a handful. Navigate 360, that same one, that is for comprehensive school threat assessment guidelines, CSTAG training, $7,858.20, and that's paid for with Title IV grants. Ava Gallick is number 2, a student. She was the award winner for the Don and Dorothy Petrunia Ohio State Memorial Scholarship, and that totaled $25,000 to Ava. Congratulations. Number 3 is our SERS, School Employees Retirement System surcharge, and we do this every year. That amount calculated by SERS is $41,080.23, comparable to prior year. About $39,000 was the amount that they billed us. Frontline Technologies, it's our renewal for our absence management and human resource software, $8,370 from the general fund. And then Neonet number 5 for our fiscal 25 services, $64,320 and change. D is going to be just returning the advances that we had approved a couple board meetings ago, and we only did them from our special revenue funds. We only had 3 that we have in place, so we're just returning those back. E is something unusual. It's not a common practice. So this is a motion to approve upon recommendation by the Auditor State's Office to convert the attached advances to transfers. These advances, which some are from more than 15 years ago, would be converted from advances to transfers to correct the financial statements of the district for presentation purposes. So, and this is kind of pulling the screen behind what we do as auditors, or what I used to do. So this is an audit work paper right here in place, and this is from a couple years ago. And a little trick of the trade for auditors when we work on these work papers. So it's the Cuyahoga Heights Local School District. It's from fiscal 18, GAAP, and it has TMM is Taylor Mace. SOM is Steve Mumar. And then I would be MJM typically, and audit work papers. And advances, when they were made, are right here. You have new advances and then repayment. So we're approving the repayment of advances, right? Just imagine if we didn't do a repayment. So we did the first step, but we never did the second step to close the door on the advances. Well, that's what happened back then. And looking at this, we were able to find when these advances that are just hovering on our financial statements for years, the note here said this one is from fiscal, at least from fiscal 12. This one's from fiscal 16. And this one's from at least fiscal 12 here when Taylor was doing it years ago. So I worked with Jennifer over at the Auditor State's office. And she goes right down here to her email. So she goes, normally with issues like this, we would have the board approve to convert the advances to transfers, assuming they were originally board approved as advances. If you decide to take this route, the board can pass something in fiscal 25 to convert them to transfers. Let me know what you are thinking. We'll go from there. So I go, it's a good plan, and this is more just to clean up for presentation purposes. And she says, yes. There's no book entry needed in USAS, so it's just for presentation purposes and my financials. So we're just cleaning up some stuff that we saw from a long time ago that, again, pulling that curtain behind, you really don't, you only look at what you do in current year. You don't really look at the balance that had been hanging on those financials until, we did. Any questions on that before I move to the next item?
So are you seeing like a 23,266,000 extra balance in one of the accounts, or
No.
you just found a paperwork and?
It's paperwork. It's all just
Okay.
presentation purposes. Throughout all those years, everything worked its way out to be fixed in some fashion or another. So the first one, the 23,000, was from fiscal, at least fiscal 10. So between fiscal 10 and fiscal 25, somewhere it got fixed. So it was a problem at some point, and then somewhere along those lines, maybe fiscal 14, they somehow fixed it on the books, but it never got fixed on the financial statements. So now we're just going back and fixing it on the financial
Okay.
statements in place. So that's why there's no book entry from what she's saying. So,
Okay, so balance-wise, it balances out.
we do, we
Okay.
do. It's just erasing, kind of something that was just hanging out there. So they were approved as advances, and you would have to advance them back, and it just never happened. So the balance was never thrown out of, it could have been thrown out of whack for at least the grant fund 590. I'm not sure how they fixed it back in '08. I'd have to really hunt through our financials. But no, we just never, did the following transfer, but the money was always internal at the school district. So. Item F, so what we have here is an amendment to the restated consortium agreement of Suburban Health Consortium. So Suburban Health is asking all of its member school districts, I'm going to pull up an email from Greg Marcus, who's the president of SHC and also the treasurer at Rocky River. And his email said to all of the school treasurers and superintendents back on June 20th, he goes, hello all, for Monday's approval by the SHC Board of Directors, which is each member school district, please find the attached resolution required to be passed by each member district's Board of Education. I've also attached a clean copy of the third amendment that should be presented to your respective boards as part of this resolution for consideration. Please request approval from your Board of Education no later than September 1st, 2024. Once approved, please provide me with a certified copy of this resolution via email. He's going to file the resolutions and bring forward to the October SHC board meeting to be ratified. If there are any questions, reach out. All this does is it works on closing a loophole when we had 3 districts leave the consortium. So this primarily deals with section 10 and section 12. 10 is the withdrawal section, and 12 is just the resignation of the fiscal agent, ties back to that section 10. But what it does is it beeps up maybe where, and I'll open the red line copy here so you can see the changes. Changes are all in red. So all this resolution does to Suburban Health is it beeps up any schools leaving. So they were leaving too easily and not following the intent of the consortium agreement. They were finding that loophole to get out quickly. What this does, and the entire consortium of superintendents and treasurers worked on this verbiage, and we voted all in sync. So we were all on the same page with this. This makes it to where, hopefully, nobody can use any type of a loophole to leave the consortium. They have to give proper notice and pay everything that is proper with it. So that's what this resolution
They want a whole
entails.
year before you can leave the consortium.
100, not quite a whole year, it's 180 days, which was the original language. And that actually was a point of discussion amongst the treasurers and superintendents because, you know, that wasn't taking place. The schools just left on short notice, and they weren't adhering to 180 days because they did find a loophole.
I see 365 days.
Right. See my little note right here that I have?
180 is crossed out.
Correct.
If you hover over that,
Yeah, if you hover on my note.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you, yeah, this is the copy I copied, but if you find it, it's actually 180 days.
Yeah, I
Any other
see it
com-
there under number 3, it says 180 days.
So, yeah, they went back to 180 days, which was the original language. This came up when we discussed it, and a lot of people felt 365 was too long to give notice. And we felt that 180, which originally was in the consortium language, was fine. It was just these schools weren't adhering to the 180. They were finding a loophole to leave sooner than that. And that's why all the schools were angry because they're like, wait a sec, you're not following a consortium agreement. Lawyers got involved and, you know, it was the recommendation upon all the super and treasurers in the consortium to beef up this language with the hope that no longer can schools use any type of loophole to leave suburban health. G. So G is a motion to approve payroll practices. So we have a unique situation where we have a teacher assistant going to become a teacher. And since we're doing the 27 pays this year, in order for her to move over to become a teacher and not skip a pay, this allows us to do 28 pays. And what we did is we worked with the teacher in question, and she had emailed us right here, and she goes, "Good morning, it was nice to speak with you and Matt this morning. This email is to notify you that I've decided that I would like to have my 24-25 salary spread over 28 pays rather than skipping pay." So this just makes it more accommodation to the staff member. If we have any staff members who ever make a transition from becoming a teacher assistant to a teacher, because everybody's on different timelines for when their contracts start. Teachers start in September, 260 start in July, we start officially in August. So there's different timelines for all these different contracts. So if you have a TA who would have started, you know, at a certain point, maybe July or August, they don't start in September. So this just makes it if she's switching over, we don't have to make her skip a pay. Because that's harder if you have to go like 4 weeks without a payroll. That's all we do for this as we work with the employee. H is going to be a memorandum of understanding. This is super simple, and I have the language right here. So all we're effectively doing is crossing off, and this just applies to any 226-day administrative assistants. Before we had them beginning with their second pay date in September. Now this would be the second pay date in August. We're actually trying to get there with the 27 pays. We have that calendar creep going on, so it's out of line. And every so often you have to, just the way the calendar works with leap year and just all the different years, like your birthday is never on the same day. It always like shifts kind of with this. And the 226 administrative assistants begin work when, Matt, August 1st-ish?
Yes, August 1st.
So it didn't make sense to make them wait until the second pay in September for their first paycheck if they're starting work August 1st. So that's what this MOU does. And the last item I have for approval would be two then and now certificate items for Frontline and Neona.
Okay, any other questions for the treasurer? Further discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Deca?
Aye.
Mr. Devens?
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter?
aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Treasurer's discussion and comments.
Yep, just a few. We did have a few items of business too. So 7A, our gap conversion did begin. We do contract with the Auditor of State's office for that gap conversion. scrolling through it. 7B, the Health Cost Containment Committee. We had a meeting this past Tuesday. I've been talking a lot. I guess I can throw out to Mark or Stephanie on your thoughts, or do you want me to? I can recap. Or-
Well, yeah, I think if you explain
Yep.
what the conversation was,
Yep.
we can
Definitely.
recap it.
So, in the admin content here, you know, a health cost containment committee meeting was scheduled because of a possibly new methodology dealing with plan design pricing. That new methodology, the old one was looking at claims. This new methodology is called the bucket approach. And there could be a vote on this very soon. So we wanted to set up a meeting just to discuss the bucket approach and how it would impact Cuyahoga Heights schools. And my personal opinion going in was I was against it because what they did was they have a, you know, I understand what they're going for with, you know, looking at this bucket approach and dealing with plan design and trying to separate plans via plan A, B, C, and D. But I think as we talked it through with the Healthcare Cost Committee, they're dividing it a bit more maybe than what they need to. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it seems like they took a path at trying to make it fair and adjust, okay, some, they have similar plans, some schools are paying more than others, let's adjust it, make it fair. But then there were some that would have had to pay 5 or 6% more, and instead of making them pay 5 or 6% more, they said, oh no, we'll just put you in your own bucket. So now your cost doesn't actually go up. So it doesn't actually seem like it's achieving what they intended, and I think we all just felt like it didn't really make sense for us to vote in favor of that when we would end up having to pay more.
Yeah, the whole approach was to start grouping, you know, schools into buckets. So think of all these different, you know, cookie buckets, you know, chocolate chip, peanut butter, oatmeal raisin. And then what they did is they kind of went a step further and they said, okay, we're going to take the chocolate chip bucket and we're going to make more buckets out of that, so smaller chocolate chip buckets, when maybe they didn't need to. Think of it that way. So they're just kind of going a second level when we looked at it and we said, we get their idea, but they're going a bit too much with the buckets as opposed to maybe that first level.
So I appreciate the time that the committee's put into this, and I did want to encourage my fellow board members, if they haven't had a chance yet, to take a look at the spreadsheet that Mr. Muccio prepared. And in particular, is it tabs A and E that have our, I'm not sure, the conventional or traditional healthcare insurance premium, and as currently, and then as it would be affected by this proposal. But then also tab E, I believe, is the premiums for the district's recently approved HSA option. And I would just encourage everybody, just take a peek at that, just to see what the numbers differential is.
And, you know, further to illustrate up here, and, you know, Mr. Dobbins is exactly right, and Ms. Prowse as well. But if we look at, you know, Plan C, and really the way they do it is they you know, lump you in, and really they're saying we're going to go according to deductible. So all the schools here that have deductibles of, let me go back to it, so we're looking at B and C. So either 0, 100, 200, 150, 300, right? And we're here, we're on 13. And what they're saying is, these are all the different, you know, this is chocolate chip, the chocolate chip bucket, right? But then they further made, you know, different ones. There's a bucket here, and a bucket here. So we're in a bucket of 5 with Oberlin, Bay Village, Garfield, and Medina. If we go all the way over to the right, we can see the rates for single and for family. And what they're saying is that we're here, we're paying $790. Oberlin is paying $880. So they're the prime plan in this bucket, you know, a small chocolate chip bucket. So all of these schools, Bay Village, us, Garfield, and Medina, would have to pay more, a certain percentage, 1.2, 1.1, 2.5, 1.2, to get up to what Oberlin's paying, because Oberlin has a plan almost identical to Cuyahoga Heights. So I understand that. And then for us being in Plan A, this is kind of the premium bucket. You know, the best cookie is a chocolate chip cookie. So we would have to pay to be in that premium bucket, maybe an extra 1%. So if there's a 10% overall for all the member schools, we're paying a 1% for being in Plan A, and then we'd also have to pay this, additional 1.2 on top just to get us in line with Oberlin. I think where this really lost, and it was unanimous, the consensus, I think where it lost everybody is when you look at bucket C. So let's call this oatmeal raisin. And it's Polaris, North Ridgeville, Westlake, Rocky River, and North Ridgeville. Again, they have 2 in this one. If we come over here to the rates, they're saying that the prime is Polaris, and Rocky River would be looking at 6.5 and 4.9 to get up to that amount. But what they're doing with the oatmeal raisin is they're further separating it with smaller oatmeal raisin down here. So they give Polaris their own bucket, these guys their own bucket, Rocky River their own, and see they're at 0, not at 6.5. So by making that oatmeal raisin bucket the large one, a bunch of smaller oatmeal raisin buckets, they somehow get out of paying 6.5 to maybe where that could be the fair amount for them. And that's really where the consensus of both unions and our board members and myself looked at it and said, that's a bit too much. We understand what they're trying to go after. Maybe we don't agree 100% on the idea, but certainly we don't agree with the fairness of how they kind of divide those buckets further.
Yeah, what was the line for when they said, oh, this was too much?
Exactly. Where does it kind of stop?
Right, because you could say 1%, we're over 1%, why should we have to pay,
Right.
But then the whole thing falls apart, and then suddenly we're just right back to where we started, where certain districts are paying not enough, and we don't, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. So it was the consensus of the Healthcare Cost Committee to be against this approach if a vote is called. So I'm going to throw that idea out to the full board and just say, is the consensus of the Board of Education, Mr. Young, that we take that recommendation from the Healthcare Cost Committee, and if any vote comes to be on this bucket approach, Cuyahoga Heights Schools would vote against that approach.
Which, of course, it could still pass, which you explained to us too, we could be stuck with
Majority.
this regardless, but
Correct.
what
We
should
lose-
our say in it?
Do we have to do some kind of motion on this?
No,
Okay.
just this discussion item. So it's just consensus.
Mr. Muccio, while you've got these spreadsheets up, would you mind just flipping over to
Yep.
tab E, which is the HSA option? And I would just suggest that we as a board take a look at the differences between the monthly single and family rates for the HSA option relative to what the traditional health insurance plan is actual and budgeted to cost.
And right here, this shows how many people are enrolled from what schools. So us here at Cuyahoga Heights, we have about 25. The only other school is Rocky River with 1. And then we have the CVCC, which becomes effective January of 2025. So there's that one lucky person at Rocky River, but everybody else is here in Cuyahoga Heights. So we're the first one really to take the leap in the deep end of the pool with HSA at the consortium. I'm sure other schools, I know Polaris and Garfield Heights are looking at this too, as well.
What's our percentage of participation?
20, give or take,
20%?
roughly, probably a safe estimate. So if we can get more, I mean, we do see a savings there, a net savings with the district, and we are encouraging more of our employees to go. I think it takes a little time to get them to jump on, but I think, good word of mouth, and that's what we thought going in, all positive stories. And once they hear it from their peers, it's a little easier to, understand as we go. We have a good, allocation of members taking HSA across all different positions here at the school district. So it's not just, teachers, for example. It's, a bunch of different positions that we have. So it looks like consensus is to take that recommendation and go with it.
I would say, yeah, that you should stick with your original opinion.
To vote
We should-
against it.
Yeah, to vote against it, but we are not assured that the outcome, that it'll be a majority opinion, majority outcome.
Gotcha. Perfect.
And I also note in that spreadsheet that you had up there that irrespective of what your group does, that the HSA premium options would not be impacted by any proposed change, at least that I'm aware of.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The next item too is C. So this is a rate increase vote coming up Monday the 12th, SHC. So what I have up here is just the history. So last year was 13%, 6.7, 2, 0, and 4.9 for medical, and 3.37 for drug. And we can see the cash balance for suburban health. So they had 20 million back in 19, 30 million in 20, 31 million in 21, 22 million in 22, 13 million in 23. So they're starting to go down, in those 2 years. And that's really when the panic happened and the switch was made from Medical Mutual to Anthem. And now we're looking at 7.3 with 2 months to go in the fiscal year. So we're still dropping with everything we've been throwing at it. 13% switch to Anthem. Claims, it's just the cost and the number of claims. And if I go down here to the attachment, this is an email from Todd Puster, the treasurer over at Orange, and he's the fiscal agent for Suburban Health. And he goes, this bottom paragraph here, the officers are meeting, and he sent this Monday, the 5th. He goes, the officers are meeting later this week to put together a rate recommendation for consideration at our August 12th Board of Directors meeting. Also, be prepared for a recommendation for a significant rate increase. As you will see from the attached financial reports, SHC has continued to deplete reserves at a time when those reserves need to be refilled. He talks about, note that the final invoice in July was in excess of $7 million, which is far and away the largest invoice in the history of SHC. And he's asking for those of you who can remit payment early, that would be appreciated, because he's getting to the point where he has to break CDs again because of cash balance with Suburban Health. So when Todd says significant increase, my hunch is between 15 and 20%. So,
That's the regular cycle increase, not an additional one-off cycle. Okay. Not great still, but I just wanted to make sure that we're
And
not.
what your group may be voting on is whatever that agreed upon premium increase might be, plus 1.2% for our particular district is what's
Right.
the outcome of what would happen potentially.
correct, it could be 10, 15, or 20, and that's across all members of all school districts in the consortium. Then, if the bucket approach makes it to a vote, it would have to pass. And if it did, we'd potentially see, what they were talking about in there, a premium to be in that chocolate chip bucket as opposed to the oatmeal cookie bucket. And then, also to get up to that prime plan. So, yeah, it could be, but again, I mean, we had Medical Mutual and Anthem reps in the room with us every meeting that we have. We have Express Scripts, and it's just, they're seeing more, they go through it, they're seeing more heart disease, cancer, inflammation. And we know just there are more, claims that are coming out there. We lost 3 school districts, North Royalton, Lakewood, and South Euclid. And what if those were the healthier school districts we lost in the consortium? It's always a roller coaster, some people will be more sick, kind of like the Browns season. You win some, you lose some. With this, it's, just cycles as we go, and, we're in it with everybody else. And, the fear would be if you leave Suburban Health, you have to find a dance partner, so you'd have to go to another consortium, but you don't know what that consortium looks like as well. And maybe they all have the same, everybody's kind of the same. It's humans, all at other school districts. And if we went on our own, there's other school district like Hudson, they had a 40% increase over 2 years in Hudson that it went up. And once you go on your own, and then if if everybody, heaven forbid, everybody gets sick, and you're on your own, then you're stuck. And you may not be able to join a consortium because they want, they don't want them.
What are you forecasting the increase might be?
I'm not sure what significant means, but as I look at the balance, we have to bring it up. And, our balance is 7 million that we're sitting at right now.
Yeah.
And our monthly expenditures are 10 million. And best practice is either 2 or 3 months cash balance sitting there. So we want to get to at least 20 or 30 million. So we have to have an increase that raises this 7 million to 20 or 30 million. So, I mean, if we want to get to that point. So that's what we're tackling. There's no easy way to,
And that's gonna be talked about August 12th?
yes,
Okay.
Monday. And I'll be able to report at the next board meeting.
And you'll be there at that meeting?
Yep, and could be Matt's first one too. That's super. So,
Yay.
yeah. lot going on. Last two items, and I'll go through this quick. This is just a discussion item. So what this deals with is it's a resolution that we would pass, and let me talk about kind of what it is. So we had a recommendation from Ryan Pendleton, and that's Ryan. He works over at the ESC of Northeast Ohio, and he's the executive director of the North Coast Shared Services Alliance. He essentially is the interim treasurer for any school that needs it out there. That's what that service does. He was the former treasurer of Akron schools and Barberton schools. And he really recommended, if you haven't done so already, to pass the resolution to go with insurance in lieu of a bond. So it's really bond versus insurance. And the treasurer, superintendent, and board president have bonds in place according to our policy. Now, this is our policy right here that we have. And in our policy, which is 1310, we have at the bottom, in lieu of executing a bond, the board may authorize the treasurer to be covered by an insurance policy issued by a board-approved and accredited insurance carrier or joint self-insured pool. Policy must cover the board from losses caused by fraudulent or dishonest actions of and the failure to perform a duty prescribed by law of the treasurer or other employee. Coverage must be equal to or greater than the amount required by the bond or a surety bond. The treasurer shall deposit with the president of the board a copy of documentation, the insurance provider, evidence of proven coverage before the employee is considered qualified for that position and undertakes official duties. So this is just in our policy, so we'd be just doing that portion of the policy. And we have our contact from Neola. He goes, it's our understanding that what is highlighted within yellow addresses the insurance in lieu. So the resolution you have should suffice for board approval. So we're good from Neola's point. And why are we looking at this? Why was the recommendation made by Ryan Pendleton to go in this direction? So this was a law that actually was passed. So I have a write-up here from our insurance company, Chris Feetner. So he goes, "Hi, Matt, there's really nothing you have to do on our end. The policy language will automatically cover you. But if you want to, do it the right way, you have to note the change in board policy, which we have, potentially your contract, and the bond." So he has some wording from our insurance company, Sources Attorneys, put together, which is right here. So this is a document created by Jessica over at this law firm. And she just talks about, what we're looking at, item 1 or 2. And before I go into this, Chris wrote up, a little couple-page paragraph. Since the law was changed a few years back, allowing treasurers to carry employee dishonesty insurance in lieu of a bond, it only makes sense for the treasurers and everyone else to get rid of their bonds and go with an employee dishonesty policy. The reason a board president and/or super shouldn't want a bond is the same as why a treasurer shouldn't want a bond, because if there ever is a claim made against that bond, they will have to pay the bonding company back personally. That's how bonds work. If they are stealing district money, then sure, that makes sense. But what if that's not the case? What if they didn't actually steal money? It was someone under their watch for some other reason or allegation. The bond could still potentially be triggered, and now they're on the hook even though they didn't steal any district money. Instead of a bond, they should be covered by the district's employee dishonesty policy. If one of those individuals were stealing money, that insurance company would still try and remediate back against that individual to repay the money. If they didn't actually steal the money, then they wouldn't. Plus, the employee coverage usually has a much higher limit. In your case, $1 million, and it would still pay the claim. Even if the super board president or treasurer has a bond. So in other words, you're paying for a bond that would never potentially be triggered unless the, I'll just leave out the last. Article on that. But they have a good example by the law firm here. So, what they're talking about is, this is the exact verbiage that we have in our policy. So they're saying, what we have done is modify board policy to reflect the change in law that would allow the treasurer to maintain insurance coverage in lieu of a bond. So the policy language we add is this, which we already have in our Neola policy that's been approved by the board years ago. And then we would add the following language to the treasurer's contract when it's next negotiated. And it just talks about the insurance policy coverage. So really all this does is, in law, a number of years ago, in 2021, the state made it more time that occurs, gets adjudicated, goes through the legal process, and any, money that's looking to come back will be covered by the insurance policy that's in place. This really is just for any mistakes that happen. If somebody enters, inadvertently the wrong item, and a finding for recovery comes from the New York State's office, it's to let the insurance policy cover it instead of a bond where somebody's personally paying out of pocket for that finding for recovery. Again, this is Ohio law, and this is what Ryan over at the ESC is recommending all treasurers and all school districts go to. So it's really us just using our policy and electing to take that one item in our policy that we have in place. But what I would do is I just have this as a discussion item. I'll email these out to everybody. So take your time, read it. There's no rush. I mean, this happened years ago. But Ryan really kicked it into gear because he is the interim at a lot of school districts. And he's seeing a lot of mistakes at all these school districts, a lot. And he's worried about himself getting a finding for recovery as an interim treasurer, and then through a bond personally going back to him for that inadvertent mistake. So he's really pushing, to take the law up that was written in ORC and policy and the resolution, and then have insurance cover any of those types of mistakes that we have in place. So the insurance company picks up, instead of personally paying the bonding company back for that inadvertent mistake that they have. Because mistakes can happen at any time, and you try to, fix everything, but there's no fail-safe. And, I think this is something that he's really pushing and saying, I don't think any treasurer is going to go any farther with this at any other school in the state of Ohio. I think this is probably going to be, no treasurer is going to send them down the line for a bond anymore. It's just not going to do the job, because it's too easy for a mistake to happen, and they have to pay out of pocket for a final recovery, as opposed to the insurance company covering it. So that's what I'm seeing as I talk to all the other Northeast Ohio treasurers. Virtually everyone at the meeting that I was at, either has it right now or, they're in process, and some just thought insurance covered it, but, this is Ryan really pushing on all of us. He's like, guys, if you just make sure this is locked down, because, he's like, go according to law, and this is in law that we have. So I'll send everything out to everybody to read and go from there.
But this would not just be for the treasurer, it would be for anybody who's required to have a bond or insurance, is
Yeah.
what you're saying?
We would follow the law, absolutely.
Which would be, so everybody would then be treated the same.
Yeah, as it's written in law.
Yep.
And the last item we have is Capital Conference. It's that time of year again, so that's going to be coming on the horizon. I'll start forwarding that information out, and if we're planning to go, they have the information on delegates. So, yep. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you. Unless there are any questions.
Any other questions for the treasurer? Okay, hearing nothing, let's move on to section 8, superintendent's business.
Thank you, Mr. Zuchaki. Ask the following to be considered for approval. So we have item 8, which is the general business of the superintendent, A, B, and C. Under staff resignations, number 9, we have no items. Under number 10, employment, we have 2 items, A and B. Under 11, employment of substitutes and volunteers, we have 0 items. And then under number 12, this would be agreements, contracts, and memberships. We have A through E. Ask that these items be considered for approval.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the superintendent's agenda, consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
That was me.
No, that was you.
I'll second
Mark
that.
was looking at me.
And a second by Mr. Dobbin. Any discussion?
Absolutely, yeah. Let me go through each of these items pretty
Okay.
quickly. So letter A is required by law that we approve the initial bus routes, and you see that attachment kind of gives a what time is my school bus coming down a particular street. Got to give Mrs. Hupsey and Mr. Friss a lot of credit because they're navigating quite a bit of construction that we see throughout the district, and they do a great job of keeping up with our local government to make sure that the bus routes are accurate. Any changes to those bus routes after this point doesn't need board approval. It will just be updated and posted on the website and communicated out. The student fees, we do this every year. The only two things that we're recommending to increase, number one would be the price of student lunches to go up by 25 cents. This is based on an analysis that Ms. Mead and Mr. Muccio did, looking at the claims reimbursement reporting system. Actually recommended that we go up 52 cents, I think, a little higher than 25 cents, but we have not had an increase in quite a while. So that recommendation's being made. And then Mr. D. working with some of the class officers, the only fee is really a due. It's been $5, $10, $15, and $20 at each of the classes, and that money essentially goes into an account that helps offset a lot of those senior events, whether it's going to, it used to be Dave & Buster's, they don't go there anymore, to defer the cost of that, the cost of prom, so we can keep the ticket prices down, and even after prom. All that kind of goes into a bank, so to speak, for those kids to use when they become seniors. And he, from feedback from some of the student officers from the past, and some of the class advisors said it'd just be best if we set it at $25. That way, we're able to offset more of those costs than we have been able to do. So those are the only two items that are on the fee list that we're recommending. The next item is the approval of the elementary school handbook. Mr. Melvin modeled that after Mr. D-Trey's version, which is based on our Neola policy. Mr. Burek had updated that last year, and it had kind of given him a great format for us. So that's Mr. Melvin's recommendations. He included, I believe, line by line what the changes were. Next, down to employment, we've got first supplemental positions per the chat contract. These are primarily coaches that you're seeing for the fall, as well as some scoreboard operators, so rounding out a couple other supplementals that we have within the school itself. And then if you go to the next, that's the miscellaneous pay supplementals. It's on our miscellaneous pay schedule that we approve every year and modify every so often. These are ticket takers for the upcoming school year. Okay, if we go down to agreements, contracts, and memberships, the first is to approve AT&T Security fire and elevator data line upgrades. This is a 3-year contract to replace the copper phone lines that is required. We're required to have that for our security fire and elevator systems. Mrs. Martin and Mr. Moore have been working on this. They noticed that the cost had doubled to have those lines, and AT&T confirmed the price hike, and they stated that that's only going to continue to rise. So it was a good time to upgrade that to actually save some costs in the long run. So 2 parts of the upgrade. First part of the project is the installation of communication boxes that would tie into the security fire and elevators that connects to our district network, and the second part actually stores the data into cellular backup so that we don't lose that should we have a power outage. So the monthly cost of the project will be on par with the current cost that the district is paying. Letter B, this is with Monarch School for the tuition for a student per that student's IEP. Mr. Burek, does that include transportation costs or anything like that? It does not. This is just simply the tuition payment for a student. Next is Navigate 360's threat assessment training, Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines, CSTAG. That's an annual subscription. So 2 years ago, school districts were required to have threat assessment teams by law. They're required to do biannual training, which we had fulfilled that, but the official recommendation of the Department of Education and Workforce is to go with this particular version of threat assessment training. Mr. Burek heads this particular team up. We've got school counselors, building principals, and a couple other representatives that are going to get this training. We're using it as, we're counting it as underneath what's called the One Plan, Safe and Healthy Schools, which allows us to use Title IV grant funds. So even though there's a cost of around $7,000, that is being offset by Title IV funds. So we're able to use that. And that starts actually, I think, on Friday. Yeah, we're going to start that training. And it'll
Start training tomorrow once we get that signature.
yeah, once we get the signature, we start training tomorrow. it really is a good program. We want to make sure we're on par with what everybody else in the state is doing, and I think the majority are, according to the DEW website. Letter D is to Renewal Ohio as America. We've used this for approximately 6 years. It's our social studies curriculum in 4th grade, and it's run by the Ohio History Connection. Used to be called the Ohio Historical Society. So this is just a continuation. It's a 1-year contract. I'm not looking to do long-term contracts right now until the DEW kind of shakes out as to what that's going to look like from a curriculum and instruction and assessment standpoint. We know that that department is now under the governor's office, and should the governor change, the DEW could change. And so you really have to be wise, and this is, especially when you're talking about social studies and history and government, we just want to make sure we're being wise and not locking ourselves in too long. And then letter E, this is, so with our fire panel being currently inactive, and we actually had, Paladin was in today. They believe they're going to have our fire system operational by the end of the week. Our fire department had, I want to say requested, but it felt a lot like required, that when we didn't have anybody in the building, at least before students are here, that we had to have a fire watch service. That fire watch service is what Securitas is providing, and they have a very routine, systematic route that they have to follow to ensure that nothing has been compromised as a result of fire. They got all the bases covered with respect to liability and things like that. It's $47 an hour, and you say, well, why don't we hire our own people to do that? Well, then if anything goes wrong, the liability falls on those individuals in the school district, whereas this is a company that specializes in this. So, we are hopeful, fingers crossed, that we have a short-term fix for that fire panel. Should it not work and school starts, then we're going to have 24/7 fire watch at $47 an hour until we get the fire panel or fire system replaced to 2024 code.
So we may not spend this entire $30,000?
That's exactly right.
Okay,
Yeah, our hope is that we only spend a fraction of that,
okay.
right? About a week's worth. We budgeted for about a month's worth on that one, and we think by the end of the week we are going to be done with that service. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, sign of the cross, whatever you do. So I went through those items pretty quickly there. Any questions about those? I had provided those in your weekly update in a little bit more detail.
Right.
Any questions or discussion on the superintendent's items? Please call the roll.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to section 14, superintendent comments.
Yeah, certainly. So, being my first official board meeting, you can give me this, which means you got to stop talking, or we can keep going if you have any other questions. A couple things I wanted to bring up. One was that solar project. Did you see that I had listed that for you? So Mr. Mucci and I met with Mrs. Katz from Solar for Schools. We just got a little bit more information. The total project is a $660,000 project, of which $316,396 is covered by 2 grants. The district would be eligible potentially for a $264 reimbursement through an IRA tax incentive that we're really not sure how that works, since we don't file federal taxes as a school, from what you tell me, Mr. Muccio. Then that would leave $79,604 that the district would be solely responsible for. However, you have to front the $264,000 and the $79,604. So again, you're talking about fronting over $300,000 just to get the project started, and you would not potentially get the reimbursement from the federal government for 2 more fiscal years, and it would take 2.1 fiscal years to break even on the $80,000. And just to throw out, just to kind of put it in perspective, because it sounds nice, but there are other things that we don't we haven't factored in that it would be at the cost of districts. For example, the cells that store the energy have to be placed in containers that, should those cells explode, that, you would not compromise other parts of the facility. That would be a cost to the district as well. There are things like that. And, again, putting it in perspective, in 2021, GPD estimated that to replace the middle school, high school fire system, because it's such a big complex, was just under $580,000. And in 2022, they came back a year later and said that has now, because of rising costs, just under $770,000. And you can't operate without a fire system, which we're going to get our old 29-year-old system up and going. But there's a long-term fix that has to happen here. And, as you look at a number like that, you start to hesitate on whether we can actually invest, $300,000 up front for a solar project. So, we have talked about it, and it's kind of our recommendation that we pull out of that project, and that extra, or that money that we would have gotten from the grant would go to the other 4 schools and lower their costs. But I just don't know how we come up with that kind of money. We've talked even, we did pass a levy, and we're very grateful for that, but we don't start collecting on that until 2025. We've gotten not a dollar from that levy yet, and that's the way it worked, and we knew it was going to work that way. So, not that that's what we're going to do, but it's just my recommendation to consider, because I got to let them know very soon whether we're going to stick with that particular project.
I'll interrupt you just for a second,
Yep.
because with a based on the numbers that you've given, 2.1-year ROI means it's a savings of about $40,000 a year. That's a pretty significant number I'd hate to give up. So I'm not so sure I want to pull out of that. I don't know that at the very least, I'd like to understand some of those maybes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reimbursement part, and I don't want to do it here, because I think that would be a lengthy discussion. So I'm not ready to pull out of that yet. I wanted to hear more, discuss more, get a better feel. Are you all right with that?
Absolutely, but they have to have an answer here pretty soon.
Yeah, what's pretty soon?
By the end of the week.
Oh, that's really soon.
Well, then we need to discuss it.
Yeah, it's by the end of the week, and it doesn't. Again, we could ask for a little bit of an extension,
Yeah.
if you would like. It's just when you look at this in line with all the other things that we've started organizing, kind of like a project manager would, because we don't have a business manager. We are the business manager, so to speak. We start lining that up with, I had a laundry list the other day. We've got the fire and security system, the hill stabilization, the high school roof. We got the auditorium, HVAC units. We got the natatorium. We got the asphalt parking lots. We got asbestos abatements. We got a garage demolition. And now we've got this. And most of these items, we're not going to be able to wait 5 years on them. The hillside's a big deal, and that can only be done in the summer months.
Right. Hillside's a big deal.
But we have to start planning for that now. We may even be talking about doing some type of an emergency resolution so that we could start moving on the fire panel. So, and we have plans for all those things. Like, we want everything fixed. But when you start prioritizing, it's worth a discussion, and we're definitely open to that.
How much of those other things, would then affect any solar panels that we install? So in other words, we spend the money, we install them, and then we gotta install a bunch of other stuff, and now we gotta take them off again. I don't know how it works, but it feels like if we're in the middle of talking about our buildings as a whole and how we're gonna add something, and we don't even know what the long-term plan is, it just kind of seems
Well, I've
hard
done
for the worst.
some homework on this. So, a couple things. Everybody here familiar with HB 264, when I say that word?
A little bit.
A little bit, cool. So those would be in the 5-year forecast. There's actually a line, if you look, line 23, that's debt service principal for HB 264 loans. So that is really for window savings projects. So that was done by the the state of Ohio. And schools could essentially go into debt. Debt goes on the 5-year forecast for energy saving windows that they have.
We
which is
did
kinda
that,
similar to-
didn't we?
Could have. So.
Years ago, we did
You're
that.
right, and that was like the worst thing in the world for any school to do, because number one, nobody could ever produce any reliable numbers on what the savings was. So it was a giant kind of mirage that was out there, that everybody talks about right now is, you know, when you see that, it's just everybody kind of shakes their head. Because I haven't seen anything proven to me. I mean, sure, bring it, you know, I'm willing to take a look and kind of go through the numbers, but I have not had anybody bring the documentation and say it's provable that there is any type of savings with it. So I'm kind of leery when I hear 35,000 per year from them. Not only that, but this is the same county that did not, you know, send out correct revenue estimates for Cuyahoga County, as well as when they sent with us to go over the spreadsheet, they misspelled Cuyahoga County, and I pointed that out to them too on the screen.
So
there-
you're saying you don't trust their math?
No,
No, it's not that.
Well,
It's not that.
So a couple other things too. We have to house the energy. That's a big, you know, tricky issue because I'm not familiar with this, so it's stepping outside my expertise.
Mine too, yeah.
But from what I'm told, we gather the solar energy and have to store it in batteries, and you have to produce a secured location for those batteries because they're combustible. So we have to build some type of containable room. I'm not sure how large these batteries are to contain it.
Is there a garage
Could be, but that's,
structure?
yeah, but, I mean, those could, I'm not sure, you know, the specifics of that.
And that's not included in the
No.
grant?
No.
It's not included in the grant.
And then also too, so they're kind of banking on the IRA tax direct pay credit. So IRA is Inflation Reduction Act that was recently passed out there. And I'm not familiar with this tax form. I'm not sure, because they're saying that, well, you could qualify for that, added on top of that, with that. And they're saying that since we live here, you know, in this area, and we have, you know, certain businesses, you know, all these kind of add up to maybe $200-some thousand that we would have to fill out. And I said, well, what happens if we fill out this new tax form that nobody's really familiar with, and they come out and say, you guys don't qualify? Then who's stuck footing the $260-some thousand bill? Didn't really get a solid answer from Cuyahoga County. That's not good. So that's another risk too, because we don't want to be out that much. So I had a lot of concerns and risks when I, you know, heard it at face value. I just wanted to, you know, let known my concerns with it.
I would be just disappointed because, you know, when we get the opportunity to qualify and
Oh,
get
yeah.
grants, you know,
Absolutely.
free money, and everything's really free, but free money, to do a project like this, I don't know, I hate to say no to the grants. And, you know, a solar project does sound like it eventually would save the district money,
Maybe.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
it might, but I
But
think there's
getting
a lot
there,
of risks,
yeah.
yeah.
But there are risks.
Yeah, I think it's the getting there that's hard to wrap my head around right now. And I understand. But the meeting we had a week and a half ago, that was the first time, you know, Mr. Muccio had even been brought into the conversation. And, you know, he immediately, like, you could see his red flags
Yeah.
popping up on his notebook. But it's just, you know, I don't know, it's not a, it's just a recommendation to consider it. It's not a,
And we don't
Well,
think
it's
we have.
more than that because we have a deadline and we lose the money if we pass the deadline. So it's more than a recommendation. It's a direction.
Would we have to vote on it? We don't.
no, we're not committed right now. It was a verbal, kind of like a verbal commitment to it.
But now they want-
Nothing has been signed, so you're not legally bound to it.
But now they want a written contract.
Well, there would have to be a written contract, yes.
by
And
the
at
end
that
of the-
point, we would have to
Oh,
vote
at that-
as a board on it.
Yeah, at that point, you're voting to sign it.
So
you're
Mr.
in.
Mr. Young and Mr. Muccio, I guess what I'm wondering is, do you see any benefit if we as a district were to ask the county or whoever we're talking to for potentially maybe a 2-week extension to our next board meeting in mid-August, with the idea that perhaps maybe a conversation with the board's attorney, who represents a number of districts, maybe he is seen or understands more about this credit, with short of you two having to do more work and more research to move this along. As I said to you earlier, my thought is that we, as a district, have to focus on the things that will benefit the greatest number of students in the most direct way. And so this is almost an exercise in what's likely going to be a lot of conversations over the near term about kind of wants and needs. And that's just my take on it. I'm one of five.
Right. I mean, when we look at our purpose is really for the benefit of all students, and, maybe it's more beneficial that we focus that purpose on all of our students with all these other projects that we have listed. This one here, I'm not quite sure there's a benefit to the students. I mean, there's a savings maybe that you can get there, but you really have to calculate out and have it proven. I still have not seen it proven. I still would ask for that. Any discussion we have going forward, I would say, I want to see proof.
Okay.
I would want to.
I would say too,
Somewhere.
when we look at all these needed projects that we have to complete, I think the ones that need the immediate attention are the ones that reflect back to safety. Like this fire system, we have to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you
we're
know,
gonna
you can't
have,
even
like I
start
said,
the
we're gonna
school
have a fix for it, but we know that's not a long-term fix. Like that's
Right.
going to be, and when that does go down again, there may not be a fix, so we
Yeah.
have to start
Yeah,
replacing.
This is my point, it's
Yeah.
like, we're gonna start school here, and we're gonna have staff and students and volunteers and, community people in the school, and we can't guarantee that it's safe, that our
Oh, we-
fire system isn't safe,
Yeah.
that's important.
In
We
the
need to
long
do that.
term, that it will
We
be
need to.
functional in the long
Yeah.
term.
No,
Yeah.
our current system that we are fixing is pretty significantly old.
Yeah.
And it's not up to the codes of 2025 either. So that's part of the long-term planning for replacement, because now we will have something that is in line with the codes. Our codes are there for a reason. They're there for safety, security of our students and our staff and whoever's in the building. And, we know that the one over here is in worse shape, but the one in elementary is the same age, so we could be having the same conversation about some of these repairs, short-term fixes, any moment. So that's just one of the things that we have, prioritized as we look at these 10 projects and say, okay, what things do we need to tackle first, and what things can we slightly delay with the least impact, with safety always being the number one priority when we have those
Exactly.
conversations.
Yeah, and we have a small team. They're all new at their jobs, and I think if we think about where we want them focused, it's on the stuff that we have to do. We could spend another couple weeks talking about it. That's another couple weeks they're not talking about the other stuff. And the other thing is, I think these guys have proven that if there's free money, they're gonna get it. And I think if they're saying, we don't think it's free money, I'm comfortable with their recommendation that the risks are too high.
But we'll talk to them about delaying, and we'll get you information. If you want
Okay.
more specific information, and you want to do digging, and I'll do digging, just so
And I don't
Just so
mind
you
giving
make a final decision being comfortable with,
Makes me feel better about the final decision.
yeah. No, because I understand, you don't want to turn away opportunities, but on the other hand, you don't really know what the long-term benefit's going to be
Right.
yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so are there any projects you want any of you want me to address? Do you want to
Yeah,
talk?
let's talk about the pool a
Yeah,
little bit, because
yeah,
I
let's-
think back in May, we talked with the engineering firm
Mhm.
about the hangars being an issue. So I was just wondering, what other safety concerns have
Yep.
we not?
Yeah, let's talk about all of that, because, so we had the engineers were out today, and they did a full walkthrough of that natatorium facility to address the hangars that's supporting the roof, and that's something we know we have to fix, because we can't let a building, become compromised once we know that it's an issue. They told us today that it is going to be 6 to 8 more weeks before they have their engineering specs ready to go, in order to contract that work out.
Just
And
to
we-
contract it?
Just to
I thought
contract
you
it.
were done mid-September.
That's what we were initially told by Jason, and
Who are these guys?
these are the engineers. So we asked for that to be put into writing, and we asked for an explanation. So we did seek follow-up. And if we don't get that follow-up tomorrow, we're going to call them because was contrary to what we were told. So, but that was the word. That was the word today, just to be able to contract out the work, and then the work would have to start, and then the work would have to come to completion. So that's where we are with that. As far as like the other things, I think the biggest thing, and it's not in chronological order, but the biggest thing was the hillside that we knew back in 2022 that the hillside was not as stable as the engineer said it should be. And they tested 5 areas. There's area north of the stadium bleachers and the area south. The area south is right by the natatorium. We had engineer Dell, I can't remember his last name, he came out and walked the facility with us. And he had made the recommendation that we address that hill within the next year. That was just his verbal recommendation when I was sitting there talking to him with Mr. Zerbola. That year would have happened this June 1st. That was when he had recommended that we address the hillside. And, the decision, I don't know if it was a monetary decision or if it was, let's see, let's wait and see. I don't really know because I wasn't part of all the conversations. But we know that we can't even start that project now until next summer to fix the hillside. And, that was a $396,000. And there were opportunities to bring that cost down by not having as high of a safety rating. There was even opportunity to do one section 1 year, one section another year. They'd broken it out a lot of ways, but there were also some hidden costs in there that they didn't see. Like they didn't charge you for demolition. They didn't charge you for taking anything that they had to demolish away. They didn't talk about, if they damage your parking lot in the meantime, they weren't going to cover those costs. There were all these things that I think Rulin was the name of the company that they had recommended. So that didn't get fixed, and we're going to have to wait until next summer to do that. And then the voids under the pool, and again, all I know is that, a void is an empty space or an open space. And the 2021 report, so we've known about that for 3 years, said that they didn't know, they said you could get false positives, false negatives, and they didn't know the depths of the voids. That was in the report that they had. So, those were, as far as I'm concerned, that was a red flag for me 3 years ago. But, at that particular time, that wasn't my responsibility. And now, I think in terms of variables and safety of kids and time, like we just don't have time. That's the big thing to fix it, because I think we have to at least fix the facility so it can be operational. And what's the long term? The long term of that is, again, that's a bigger committee type of decision. I just have to get the place where we can even talk about what is the long term? What's the 5-year, 10-year plan for that? So, especially, with the information we got today, and I had already spoken to Mr. Kelber last fall. I said, a year from now, you might want to look at, are there alternate locations that we could, rent out for our swim team? Because I want to have a swim team, and I said if I get my van license and drive them there myself, I'll do it. But there's just these variables that haven't been addressed because of time and potentially because of money, but they all point to safety, and that's always going to be the thing I'm going to look at. It's something that I can't just ignore, so to speak, and not that anybody else has. It's just that's my perspective with 30 years now in the profession. So, yeah, I was a little frustrated when I heard the timeline today.
So back in May, why didn't we have a discussion with the engineers about the hillside? We didn't talk about it at all. I'm not sure if anything changed since then as far as, or even talk about money or getting it stabilized this summer. And are we gonna have wrestling in that room or winter track or gonna use the building or? not
Yes,
gonna
so
use
if
the
we
building,
fix the
or-
hangars, we had determined that, right, in our last conversation with Jason, which was, you had a conversation with him last week, George, and then the conversation 2 weeks, we want to know specifically about let's talk about the ancillary gym. They said as long as you fix those hangars, the ancillary gym should be operational.
So the stability of the hillside doesn't matter anymore.
He seemed to think that the hillside most needs to be addressed in an auditorium area. I don't know. Again, I'm not an engineer. I can't speak to that. I'm with you, like, you just closed the whole complex.
And part of it is
I don't
the
think
way the
Jason
complex,
is either.
the way it's built, if you think about it, the ancillary gym.
I think it was an
up
add-on.
front Is more on a level ground, and then where the natatorium starts, that's where it extends back out. Okay, so, again, the structure of the building, they felt better with that being a safe area.
So you specifically asked, can we open the pool, is it safe? Can we open the ancillary gym, is it safe? Like you, I guess I'm just wondering if they are recommending that we don't open the pool, and is it because of also the voids, is that a secondary? Like,
Yeah, have
I
we
could
looked
see
at the
that being like,
voids?
okay,
Have we just,
I
that-
don't think they're going to tell us what to do one way or another.
and have we looked at the voids again? Because I think, I mean,
And I can answer it, so Mr. Zabola is getting the company to come out again, because we don't know if they've gotten larger or whatnot to do rescan, and then the next part of that process is that the scan, they drill into the voids.
right, and.
And they drop dowels in, and they determine how big those voids are.
Right.
So that is in the process of happening right now.
Right, I don't
as
think it's
well.
fair to say we're just gonna close the pool without doing any kind of like due diligence or even, I know, I understand all these factors there are, but without actually, we've been having the pool open, and we've known about these things, but we haven't, we could have done something in May. We could have, I mean, there was some steps we could have done. We met with the our architects back in May, and it was always about the hangars. And we waited till July, and now it's August, and we still haven't fixed the hangars. Now it's 6 more weeks, and the pool opens in October, and they're not gonna be done. And what's Ryan's alternate locations?
We're looking at Brooklyn, Cleveland State, John Carroll. We've reached out to Mayfield, and we've reached out to Independence. So we've reached out to those, and we're getting what the final potential alternatives will be.
And we can explore other places as well, so it's not, he has a meeting tomorrow with the athletic conference, and reach out to some other athletic directors, and then be on a district board as well for other locations that are, reasonable for us to transport to, if that needs to be the case.
So regardless, the hangars, you couldn't open anything right now, and they're not even gonna be done until we don't know when.
Yeah, I don't have a definitive
Yeah.
timeline.
So, I mean, the swim team at this point, they can't practice in
And then we're at
October.
Mercy at the other school, and practicing at 7 PM, like,
So,
yeah.
that has to happen, right? And then the question is, will it be done in time for whatever we use the ancillary gym for, and then is it safe to do so? Just so I understand, like, that's kind of the.
Addressing the hillside is part of our conversations already, because to me, that's a 6 to 10 month planning venture.
Well, I think we should get a committee together. Let's get a committee together and talk about this whole building and what the future of it is. And,
Yeah, I think, and I've not been, well, I think it would be helpful to get local village representation, elected official representation's participation in any kind of a dialogue that we have as a district about the future of a large community asset. That's my opinion. And I think that there might be a willingness on part of the village, respective villages to have a representative that would be available, I think. So I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think that is I think people are open to that idea.
I think so too.
Okay. So if that's the case, I mean, I appreciate your idea that we should think about a committee or some kind of a group to have this conversation, but I also think it would be helpful to make certain to identify village representatives and to make certain that they're available and to kind of factor their schedules and their time into whatever this group's plan and schedule is. Again, I just put it out there, that's just my thought. There may be other views on it. But that's what I would like to do.
that's gonna take time.
Well, yeah, and I guess there's kind of almost two questions, Mr. Young, maybe you have a thought on this, but it almost seems like we're contemplating potentially a temporary closure of that building for maybe this season, just because of the passage of time and the inability to get some things done. But then more broadly, I think we, as a group, may be needing to talk about the permanency of that asset, it's going forward. Am I overstating where you'd come out on this?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is to fix the voids in the pool and
Right.
to fix the hillside. And obviously the hangars we're going to fix. Like, that is the intent. We
Right.
have talked about a mechanism to do that, and a mechanism to do that within the next year.
Right.
If I could do it in the next 3 months, you best bet I would, because
Of
I
course.
understand what that means to, I understand what that means. I mean, I get it. I was a coach, I'm a teacher, I was a dad. I'm still a dad, actually. I get all those things. So it's just one of those things that is part of my first week on the job, and I'm open to assist in any way and be part of any committee and any conversation and dig up any paperwork and get anybody in here that you want to get in here. I'll do
You
that.
can dig up GPDs, I mean, I was gonna pull it up with their, we signed up with them, because it definitely is not the timeline they gave us in there.
One of the things.
Yeah, I'll give you all the documents I have
I
found.
got it in my email, I was gonna go back and look, but that's not what the document they gave us.
And the 6 to 8 weeks that we heard today was different than other times. And again, that was, the engineer was out. He has a sense of the stat in writing, because Mr. Zabola asked for him to follow up with that in writing for the timelines. So we
got
have this up because, one of the things that
It's phase one.
and then me starting in position two, being part of this, is we've done a lot of things where we've started and stopped, and not done things that we've asked GDP to do for us. So, we had a conversation with them 2 weeks ago with
It was a very honest conversation.
Matt and I saying, like, if we're gonna work together, we're asking questions because we wanna move on those things and have recommendations from our school board with which direction we're going, and then we're gonna move in those directions. So we're just not somebody who's there, like, are you ready to work with us, is the question. Like, if we're doing these projects, are we prepared to get those done under the timelines that you tell us, and, with the scope of work that needs to be done? And we've gotten a commitment right now that that is the way that they plan to move with us. But again, Matt and I like to run really fast with things. So we understand the urgency of now, when people want to have answers, when they want to have things done. And, we're working on some things he's going to share out with you guys in the near future with some, some framework for project management. What does fiscal year '25 look like? And then what do the next 3 years look like? Because we have to coordinate with Matt so we can update the five-year forecast, how we could say we have this amount of money in the pot that we can spend each year. So how do we say, out of these 10 projects, where does this fall in the line of those 10 projects? Again, with the overlying idea always being that safety is our #1 priority. Okay, so that's kind of the work that we jumped into, like you said, in the first week on the job. Trying to get things organized. Again, like, some of these things I wasn't involved in this process, I'm familiar with aspects, but not the whole scope.
I think, if I can plug in here, maybe.
And are we tied to them? I mean, is there anybody else?
There are other firms that could be explored, other schools in our area to use. And again, they come highly recommended. There's other things that I'm involved with, the Safety and Security Committee, where they've done presentations on things that are doing in other districts, and it's really amazing. So we haven't necessarily seen some of these things done in our district, other than Band-Aids, as opposed to what do we do when we do things the right way, so that we have long-term solutions that are cost-effective.
They do a good job at the Career Center, but that's a 4-year, right now, that I'm part of, that's a 4 or 5-year plan. There's a business manager, and the work is planned a whole year ahead of time. I mean, we know this year, we know now what they're gonna do next summer, because they didn't until this year, right? They'll be done in a week. Next summer, plans are, well, they're gonna start on in September and work on them. And you really, it takes a lot of effort and dedication and time to do it right, but you gotta start on time, and you said it yourself, we stopped and started a couple of times.
We had this thing called COVID pandemic that
Well,
steamrolled
that too
us.
got in the way. That really hurt us.
Really took a lot of.
Because we had,
Because,
we had started the projects, the momentum,
Prices were
the
a lot
vision.
Prices were a lot better than two, right?
We had the vision of it all,
Yeah.
of how, what we were gonna do, and they had a great plan for us,
Yeah.
and then boom, nothing happened because we couldn't.
right, thank you for reminding me, I forgot about that. That's the real
Well, but
big
even
stuff.
more recently, are you saying like we get quotes and then maybe we sit on them for a
Yeah.
little bit and then,
We don't move
you know,
on.
so I think resetting expectations with them and then that, I appreciate you guys doing
Yeah,
that.
it was a little bit of a restructure, like with Matt, who's in position and pulling over the curriculum instruction assessment with him, and then having my eyes hopefully more dedicated on some of these things to
Right.
keep the information coming in
Mhm.
to everybody is a big part of it, because Tom was taking that part on as superintendent. But again, there's a lot of things that pull the superintendent in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, 2 levy campaigns didn't help.
Right.
Yeah, I think aside from that, we have been meeting frequently to talk about mechanisms to address all of these things that we've talked about, and most, if not all of it, we have mechanisms to do it without pulling from the general fund, which I think is an important step, because the less you pull from the general fund, the longer it would be before you would go back to the community for a levy. So we're really in tune with that, and we would just want to make sure that we continue to communicate. I will continue to do that with the board, and we're willing to provide a bi-monthly update at a work session of where we are with the projects, just so you know the timeline of things. I can't get the TV. The TV doesn't like my connection, but I can send you guys all the documents I have related to pool, related to Hillside.
Okay, so can you tell them that we're gonna need the hangars done by the end of September? Right?
Call them tomorrow. Yeah, we'll call them
And
tomorrow.
then we're gonna need GPR done when? I mean,
They're,
they've got them scheduled?
yeah, they told us that we should contact the people who we had before. And Jim was either doing it today, either called him today or was going to do it first thing tomorrow, because we got all this information right
Can
at
you
the
send
end of
me an
the day.
email, let me know when it's scheduled for?
Yeah, will do.
And then I'd like to know, from GPD, the recommendation in the Hillside. They recommend only the pool should not be open, or they recommend the whole building should not be open, wrestling room,
Yep,
um,
I think it's fair.
winter track.
Yeah, yep. Makes sense. Were you gonna add anything? All right, I gave everybody a flyer, just changing gears here. This is the back-to-school bash that we're gonna be having here at the middle school, high school. That's the timeline. It coincides with the open house, so we're gonna have the opportunity for people to come up and see football practice. We're going to introduce our sports teams, specifically our seniors is the plan. Our band's going to play. We're going to have, the goal is to have the PTO there, the music boosters, the band boosters, and then everybody, and food trucks for people to eat. 2 food trucks for people to eat, and then we would have middle school, high school open house. That's not the same night as the elementary kickoff, but I think that's the next night. But we're certainly inviting it for anybody. It's not just our middle school, high school folks. So I gave you a flyer. You're certainly welcome. And then, everything is starting. It's great to see. It's great to see the band rehearsing, football team playing, volleyball. We're waiting to see them. We're refinishing the gym floors. We can't wait to see them on campus. We've got seniors painting parking spaces, dodging tornadoes in the process. So things are definitely ramping up, and everybody will start coming back to the staff on the 19th of August, and then we'll have our students back, many of them, if not most of them, on the 22nd. So a lot of stuff's going to happen before the next board meeting. So I think that's everything that I had. So
Okay.
again, if there's any other questions, just reach out to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? We can move on to board business resolutions, section 15. have the exact wording, but we need to approve the superintendent's request for Akron Area School Superintendent's Association membership through the Summit ESC for 24-25. I'll make that motion. Can we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Dobbins. Do you want to,
It's a $100 fee to be able to participate in their superintendent cohort as well. So there are more small schools in that cohort. I'm familiar with those school districts down there. It doesn't mean that I would attend all the meetings, but if I could and it worked in my schedule, it's nice to collaborate with superintendents who are in like size and similar school districts. Small, they're all over the place with finances, but they're used to solving problems, small school problems. And, we find when we go to the ESC, the big schools tend to dominate a lot of the conversations. They're very polite to us, but they don't understand the intricacies of what it's like to be in a small school district. Again, it's $100, and I'm willing to pay that out of my own pocket too. I would just need approval.
okay, anything else?
So this means that you're not gonna participate in our other
I will.
in our other one as well?
Yep.
This is just an extra one?
Yeah, it's an extra one that they all meet at different times, so it just allows me, those meetings are typically at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's simply shooting to Cuyahoga Falls.
Yeah.
You're there for an hour and a half, and then you come back here.
Yeah,
And if there's more, if there are priority things here, then I just come here.
yeah,
Summit ESC does a nice job of allowing people to zoom in. So even if I was here and I could zoom into that particular meeting, then I don't even have to drive there, I can be present at the same time, so.
As long as you can get it into your schedule.
I don't think he has to pay out of his own pocket either, though.
Certainly a
easy.
very reasonable expense, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye?
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to 17, board discussion. Anybody have any items they wish to discuss? Career Center's been really quiet. They start back on the 19th, the teachers get together. Same as here, right? The 19th.
22nd.
Well,
That's
the-
the student.
Yeah, the staff is here on the 19th. We'll have our opening convocation. You going to be two places at one time, Mr. Souchaki?
I don't know if I can be two places at one time. What time here? What-
8 o'clock would be
That's exactly
opening
the same.
remarks typically of the board president. But
Right, exactly the same time.
well, you have others who would pinch hit for you.
Yeah.
It's.
Oh, yeah, I guess home district has to come first. Let me cross out CVCC and make that CHS. Okay. And that was about the only thing I had on my notes, actually, was the fact that they're starting on the same time. So, anybody else have anything? Okay. Possible future agenda items. Section 19, should be noted the Board of Education members receive their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting. They have considerable opportunity to study and so on. Upcoming regular meetings, regular and work sessions. Wednesday, August 21st at 7, September 11th at 6, and September 25th at 7. At this point, I make a motion that we adjourn to executive session for, it's G81 and G82. Are all of these on here?
No, just the summary, I think.
Yeah,
At
the
top,
summary.
the recommended action.
It's 3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, and 5, okay. I'll make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second, go ahead, Ms.
Ms.
Prowse.
Prowse, second. Any further discussion? None. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. It is 7:43, and we're going into executive session. No action will be taken when we resume from executive session.